Welcome to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate has been released. Now it's time to evaluate it and the corresponding commander cards for any possible improvements that can be made to any of the EDH decks housed in the Burgeoning Commander Catalog. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things magic. In order for a card to be included into a deck in the Burgeoning Commander Catalog, one or more of the following criteria must be met. Number 1. Is the card a better version of one already in the 99? The new card should be an improvement over the replaced card in some measurable aspect other than it's new. A new card should replace a card of similar mana value and ability. For the purposes of redundancy, if a new card is added to the deck without replacing a card of similar function, then there must be enough justification to do so due to potentially weakening another area of the deck. We can't add a card just because. Number 2. Does the card strengthen any of the deck's themes? Decks in the BCC operate under carefully laid out themes and schematics. Any introduction of new cards must either maintain these themes or enhance them in some way. It will be difficult to justify including a new card into a build that does nothing to support the pre-existing themes of a deck. Number 3. If a card is not a better version of one already in the 99 and does not strengthen any of the deck's themes, then why is the card being considered? It's not impossible to find a slot for any card in any deck. If a card serves no other purpose than just being new and different to a build, then it is unlikely to enhance thematic synergies or strengthen win conditions in that same deck. These are important factors to recognize. Just because we can add a new card to a deck doesn't mean we should. The challenge will be to protect every build from becoming homogenized due to the frequent influx of new cards entering the format. It is reasonable, from a deck building standpoint, to slightly weaken an area of strength for the purposes of including an outside-the-box card, but it has to make sense to the overall vision of the build. The primary win condition of our Xenagos God of Rebels deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any creatures from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new cheat-to-play spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. Since Xenagos is a green deck, Monster Manual is a better version of Quicksilver Amulet. In fact, for any green deck playing with Quicksilver Amulet, Monster Manual is better. Each artifact has a mana value of 4, but Monster Manual's activated ability costs only 1 in a green mana, as opposed to the 4 mana for Quicksilver Amulet. As a bonus, since this spell is an adventure, we could cast it for a sorcery first, milling 5 cards and returning a creature card milled this way to our hand. Monster Manual is a definite inclusion into this deck and could outright replace Quicksilver Amulet, or a one-and-done cheat-to-play effect like Summoning Trap. Ancient Copper Dragon is an automatic addition to this deck and, honestly, should be considered for inclusion into any deck with red. No analysis is needed for the purposes of proving this point. The amount of mana that can be generated from a lucky roll of a d20 can overwhelm our opponents. This easily could replace Dracuseth Maw of Flames or Hellkite Tyrant. Imagine the odds in our favor synergy between Ancient Copper Dragon and Hellkite Charger. Ancient Bronze Dragon makes a strong case for inclusion. At a minimum, the X +1/+1 counters can be placed on the dragon itself. That is truly the only drawback of assessing this creature's effectiveness in this deck. How often will we be able to target two of our creatures with its combat damage dice rolling trigger? As Xenagos is doubling the power and toughness of a creature, doling out additional +1/+1 counters onto this dragon, or, if we're lucky, another evasive creature, should lead to quicker victories. At its floor, we have a big evasive creature that can get bigger and bigger each time it connects with combat damage. That alone is enough to warrant consideration for the 99. Perhaps a non-evasive creature could be replaced, like Terastodon, Urabrask the Hidden, or Hydra Omnivore. What are your thoughts? Which current creature in the 99 would you replace with Ancient Bronze Dragon? Let me know in the comment section below. Wrathful Red Dragon is a 5/5 flying dragon with a mana value of 5. Whenever a dragon we control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target that isn't a dragon. Currently, there are only 7 dragons in the 99 of this Xenagos build. We cannot reasonably believe that Wrathful Red Dragon's damage-dealing effect will be realized by other dragons on our side of the battlefield. Wrathful Red Dragon is better suited for a dragon, tribal, or changeling deck. Not here. Pass. Earthquake Dragon is a 10/10 flying dragon with trample and a mana value of 14 and 1 green mana. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of dragons we control. It also has a recursive ability. We can pay 2 and a green mana and sacrifice a land to return Earthquake Dragon from our graveyard to our hand. As stated previously, there are only 7 dragons in the current 99 of this Xenagos build. Within reason, we cannot think that there will be other dragons on our side of the battlefield in order to reduce this creature's total mana value of 15 in any given game. Although this deck has a few spells and effects that can cheat creatures into play, Earthquake Dragon is better served for a dragon, tribal, or changeling deck. I sense that this card would spend more time in our hand than it would on the battlefield. Pass. Owlbear Cub is a 3/3 for 2 and a green mana with a cheat into play effect. Whenever it attacks a player that controls at least 8 lands, we look at the top 8 cards of our library. We may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking that player. As nearly 1/3 of this deck is creatures, the odds are in our favor of hitting a creature with Owlbear Cub's attack trigger. However, attacking a player with at least 8 lands may be too late in the game for this creature to be effective. By this point, we are throwing haymakers at an opponent's life total, not jabs with a 3/3 that has the potential of adding an unjuiced creature into combat. Pass. Two-Handed Axe is an adventure with 2 very relevant effects for this deck. As an instant for 1 and a red mana, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. When paired with a Xenagos combat trigger targeting one of our evasive biggins, this is a potential win condition. For 2 and a red mana, this is an equipment that doubles the power of equipped creature whenever it attacks and has an equip cost of 1 and 1 red mana. This is the exact same type of power boost that our general provides. If Xenagos is indisposed, Two-Handed Axe is a suitable replacement, particularly when we consider the various peripheral haste-enabling effects littered throughout the 99 of this build. Two-Handed Axe fits the theme of this deck and is worthy of inclusion into the 99. How do we add this card? Do we slightly weaken our removal suite? Do we dial back the ramp? Do we narrow our graveyard recursion a bit, perhaps by replacing Reap the Past? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Giant Oncog is an 8/8 trampler for 6 and 2 green mana that has Ward 2 and gives other creatures we control Trample and Ward 2. Trample is featured throughout this deck, as many of the creatures in the current 99 of this build have it. What is less prevalent, however, is Protection. Archetype of Endurance provides hexproof, and Stonehoofed Chieftain gives them indestructible until end of turn whenever they attack. Aside from deflecting SWAT, there are no other ways to protect our biggins, which are the cogs to the engine of this Xenagos deck. Oftentimes, an opponent may leave up just enough mana for an instant speed spot removal spell. It may be worth considering Giant Oncog's value in giving other creatures we control Ward 2. Is this creature an improvement over Carnage Tyrant? Or maybe we sacrifice a bigger biggin for global protection by replacing Ghalta Primal Hunger? Perhaps one of the aforementioned non-evasive creatures from the current 99 would suffice. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The primary win condition of our Edgar Markov deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any vampires from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new tribal spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. For the purposes of flavor, any vampire-specific cards also will be evaluated. Astarion the Decadent is a 4/4 vampire elf rogue with Death Touch and Lifelink for 4 in Orzhov colors. There are only 2 creatures with a mana value of 6 in the current 99 of this build, Necropolis Regent and Patron of the Vein. These 2 vampires are considered game enders based upon the combat-laden theme of this deck. Good thing Astarion the Decadent brings some very relevant abilities attached to its 4/4 death-touching, life-linking body. At the beginning of our end step, we choose one of the following 2 modes. If we select Food, then target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life lost this turn. If we select Friends, then we gain life equal to the amount of life gained this turn. As mentioned previously, this is a combat-themed deck. However, woven into this combat theme is a life drain package that Astarion fits into very well. Astarion is a definite consideration for inclusion in this deck, but great care must be taken. It is important to not allow the average mana value of this build to balloon, since Edgar Markov's Eminence ability can be utilized while he is in the command zone. Casting cheap and effective vampire spells yield great early game returns, allowing us to build an army quickly for the purposes of overwhelming our opponents. Thus, if we are including Astarion, a vampire with a higher mana value should be replaced. Perhaps Feliza, Fang of Silverquill, or Immerstrom Predator fits this description. These creatures do not enhance our vampires or our life drain package. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Folk Hero is a background, and for the purposes of this deck, will only find refuge in the 99. It is an enchantment for 1 and 1 white mana that reads, Commander creatures we own have, whenever we cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with this creature, we draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. This only triggers during our turn, and we need both it and our general on our side of the battlefield in order to draw a card. Plus, casting Edgar will not trigger it, as it must be another vampire creature spell. This card is too limited and simply will collect dust on the battlefield or in our hand as we await Edgar's presence on the battlefield. Pass. The primary win condition of this Will Help the Rock Cleaver deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any zombies from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new tribal spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. For the purposes of flavor, any zombie-specific cards also will be evaluated. Calculating Lich is not a new card. It first appeared in Game Night 2019, making it less accessible due to the limited availability of that product. Now reprinted in the Party Time pre-constructed commander deck from Battle for Baldur's Gate, it's time to evaluate this card's potential in our Wilhelt deck. Calculating Lich is a 5/5 zombie wizard with menace for 4 and 2 black mana. Whenever a creature attacks one of our opponents, that player loses 1 life. Notice the text on this card. It says, whenever a creature attacks one of our opponents. It does not say, whenever a creature you control attacks an opponent, or whenever one or more creatures attack. This ability can be triggered by one opponent attacking another opponent. An added bonus. Since this Wilhelt deck can create a grand army of zombies, calculating Lich's ability is a potential win condition. This is a definite consideration for the 99 of this build, easily replacing Corpse Harvester or Champion of the Perished. The primary win condition of this Morphin the Boundless Wooburg tribal deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing Wooburg creatures, spells, and effects from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new Wooburg synergies, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. For the purposes of flavor, any cards with Wooburg casting costs or activated abilities also will be evaluated. Unfortunately, there are no cards from Battle for Baldur's Gate that meet the criteria needed to trigger a review for possible replacements in this Morphin the Boundless Wooburg tribal deck. The primary win condition of this Kalia of the Vast deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any angels, demons, or dragons from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new cheat-and-to-play spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. Battle Angels of Tyr is a 4/4 Angel Knight with flying and myriad for 2 and 2 white mana. Whenever Battle Angels of Tyr deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card if that player has more cards in hand than each other player. Also, we create a treasure token if that player controls more lands than each other player. Lastly, we gain 3 life if that player has more life than each other player. As Myriad triggers when Battle Angels of Tyr is declared an attacker, each opponent will be attacked by a copy of it. As long as we don't have the most cards in hand, control the most lands, or have the most life, we will reap some rewards when these angels deal combat damage to our opponents. The only caveat? Battle Angel of Tyr's Myriad trigger will not trigger when put onto the battlefield through Kalia's attack trigger. As the creature already is attacking when it ETBs, Myriad will not trigger. Is this a concern? Hardly. This card's mana value is only 4, which is the second cheapest mana value among creatures in the current 99. Our various cheat-and-to-play effects are unnecessary since this card's mana value is only 4. Man, have we come a long way from Sarah Angel. This creature is a definite consideration for inclusion in the deck. We may need to create a list of weakest creatures from the current 99 for the purposes of deciding who's on the chopping block. Perhaps Thunder Dragon is number 1 on this list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Ancient Brass Dragon is a 7/6 Elder Dragon with flying for 5 and 2 black mana. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we roll a d20. We put any number of creature cards from graveyards with a total mana value of X or less onto the battlefield and under our control, where X is the result of the d20. Although this has the highest whiff rate of any of the ancient Elder Dragons from Battle for Baldur's Gate, it's still a consideration for the 99 of this build. Let's not consider our opponent's creatures when evaluating this card, because that can change from game to game. Let's consider the high-grade quality of our own creatures, especially the numerous ETB triggers from our angels, demons, and dragons. It's a numbers game. As long as we connect with combat damage from Ancient Brass Dragon, and as long as we have creatures in our graveyard, we have a 75% chance of recurring at least one creature. Of course, the higher the result of the d20, the better our return. This is worth the risk. Ancient Brass Dragon is worthy of inclusion into our Kalia build, and could replace Bladewing the Risen as an improved source of recursion. As stated previously, it's difficult to reconcile not including Ancient Copper Dragon in any deck with red in it. Nearly all spells and magic require mana to cast them, and Ancient Copper Dragon can provide vast quantities of it. With a lucky die roll, a chasm-like gap in resources can be created between ourselves and our opponents. Ancient Copper Dragon is an automatic inclusion into this Kalia deck, and easily could replace Hellkite Tyrant as an improved source of mana acceleration. Baldur is a 5/5 dragon with flying for 3 and 2 red mana. Whenever it attacks or dies, we can choose one or more of the following modes, but each must target a different opponent. Either target opponent draws 3 cards and then discards 3 cards at random, or target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact, or, lastly, Baldur deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. This demon provides a refreshing slate of opponent disruption, and is a great target for Mimic Vat. Potential caveat: Baldur's attack ability does not trigger when put onto the battlefield with Kalia's attack trigger. No matter, Baldur's mana value is only 5. This creature checks all of the boxes needed for inclusion into the 99 and is a definite consideration. Perhaps Baldur can replace Baneslayer Angel, as she does not have any ETB or LTB triggers and does not enhance any of the creatures on our side of the battlefield. Ancient Gold Dragon is a whopping 7/10 Elder Dragon with flying for 5 and 2 white mana. Seriously, 7/10. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we roll a d20. We create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens with flying, where X is the result. This is a definite inclusion into the deck. More and more creatures from the current 99 of this build are being studied much more carefully due to the high number of potential replacements offered in Battle for Baldur's Gate. Ancient Gold Dragon could replace Ryusei the Falling Star with the following thought process. Dealing 5 damage to all creatures without flying is unnecessary if we are creating swaths of flying 1/1s whenever Ancient Gold Dragon connects for combat damage. Seriously, a 7/10. Windshaper Planetar is a 4/4 angel with flying and flash for 4 and 1 white mana. When it enters the battlefield during the Declare Attacker step, for each attacking creature, you may reselect which player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. As demonstrated during this Kalia review, creatures are being assessed with greater scrutiny due to the number of powerful additions from Battle for Baldur's Gate. For Windshaper Planetar, it seems too situational with too many variables for it to be considered an all-around useful card in this build. Is this creature better than any of the other creatures reviewed for Kalia today, or any of the creatures in the current 99? For me, the answer is no, and no. Pass. As discussed earlier in this set review, Wrathful Red Dragon is best suited in a Dragon Tribal or Changeling deck. The creatures in this Kalia build are split among angels, demons, and dragons, and although there may be a greater shift towards dragons after the final revisions are made after this Battle for Baldur's Gate set review, it does not change the likelihood of this dragon being impactful enough to justify a spot in the 99 of this Kalia deck. Pass. Brainstealer Dragon is a 6/6 dragon with flying for 5 and 2 black mana. At the beginning of our end step, we exile the top card of each opponent's library. We may play these cards for as long as they are exiled. If we cast a spell this way, we may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. Whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under our control, they lose life equal to its mana value. I love this card. It is such an interesting and outside-the-box way to drain our opponent's life totals while building our own board state. However, is it the right fit for this build? We are combat-driven, and Brainstealer Dragon's ability is an end-step trigger with no need for combat. It certainly can attack. It's a 6/6 dragon with flying. This is an example where deck building, or in this case, deck revising, is tested. Nearly all of the creatures in this build have an ETB, LTB, or combat trigger, and the ones that don't provide powerful abilities that justify their inclusion into the deck, like Avacyn, Angel of Hope, Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, Doom Whisperer, and Vilis, Broker of Blood. These creatures either provide powerful global effects, set up game-ending spells, or provide peripheral abilities like creature removal and card draw. I don't think Brainstealer Dragon is on the same level as these creatures. Do you? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The primary win condition of this Cathrall Aspect Warper deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any keyword creatures from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new keyword-dependent spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. Wilson Refined Grizzly is a 2/2 bear with Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Ward 2 for just 1 and 1 green mana. For the purposes of this Cathrall deck, that's 3 appropriate keyword abilities for just 2 mana. That is a great return on our minuscule mana investment. Wilson has the exact same keyword abilities as Ramunap Hydra, and with a 60% discount on the mana value. Wilson Refined Grizzly is a definite inclusion into the 99 of this deck, and easily could replace the aforementioned Ramunap Hydra. The primary win condition of the Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck is commander damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any dragons from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new tribal spells and effects, cheat-and-to-play spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement will be assessed for possible inclusion. For the purposes of flavor, any dragon-specific cards also will be evaluated. Battle for Baldur's Gate has provided dozens of new dragons into Magic's card catalog. We will not evaluate each and every one of them. For the purposes of brevity and succinctness, every rare and mythic rare dragon from Baldur's Gate will be discussed. There are so many potential additions to the 99 of this deck that, admittedly, this Scion build is going to change fundamentally and may never be the same again. As we brace ourselves for the imminent upheaval to the 99, a list of dragons to be replaced will be compiled at the end of Scion's review. Here we go. Ancient Gold Dragon has the potential to create a thunder of dragons with one lucky roll of a d20. After connecting with combat damage to an opponent, of course. These 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens with flying all enter the battlefield at the same time, therefore seeing each other at the same time as well. This has game-ending synergy with Dragon Tempest, as each dragon will deal X damage to any target where X is equal to the number of dragons we control. If we only control Ancient Gold Dragon at the time, then we have a 50% chance of dealing at least 11 points of damage 10 times. A 50% chance. That's a coin flip. An early turn Dragon Tempest prioritizes using Scion's ability to become a copy of Ancient Gold Dragon as soon as possible, as a chance of winning the game through direct damage is too enticing to ignore. Scourge of Valkus offers the same kind of synergy. Due to the lethal playability with multiple staples in this Scion deck, Ancient Gold Dragon is a definite inclusion into the 99. Ancient Silver Dragon is an 8/8 dragon with flying for 6 and 2 blue mana. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we roll a d20. We draw cards equal to the result and have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Drawing cards has been a purposely neglected feature since this deck's inception. We wanted dragons to stay in the library in order to utilize Scion's ability to become copies of them. The most powerful dragons in Magic's history are not as powerful to Scion if they're in our hand and not in our library. That concept is now dead, and we will revise the 99 accordingly to reflect this evolution in future appearances in the Up and Up series. On average, we draw 10 cards when this dragon deals combat damage to an opponent, and we have no maximum hand size. We are not dissuaded by this dragon's mana value, because for only 2 mana it becomes a copy with Scion, or it is cheated into play. Ancient Silver Dragon is a definite inclusion into the 99. Utilizing Scion's ability has the potential to fill our graveyard with various dragons. This build is constructed with ways to exploit this inevitability to our advantage through mass recursion spells. Ancient Brass Dragon offers another way to recur these dragons from our graveyard back onto the battlefield. But we must roll high in order to take the greatest advantage of this dragon's combat damage trigger. In the current 99 of this build, there are 6 dragons with a mana value of 5. So, we have an 80% chance of recurring at least 1 dragon from our graveyard. Of course, the higher the result of the d20, the more dragons we recur. Ancient Brass Dragon is being evaluated through the scope of our own creatures, not our opponents. Our creatures are constant. We know what's in our deck. We're not so sure about our opponents. Due to the synergy between Scion's ability and Ancient Brass Dragon's recursive effect, it is a definite inclusion into the 99. Since it's been stated multiple times already, it goes without saying that Ancient Copper Dragon is a definite inclusion into this deck. The deck has red in it, the creature is a dragon, and its ability can tilt the game completely in our favor. Nothing more needs to be said. Ancient Bronze Dragon's ability can put enough +1/+1 counters on Scion to make lethal commander damage viable in one attack without activating Scion's ability. Granted, there is just a 20% chance of this happening if Ancient Bronze Dragon hits for combat damage, and the result of our d20 is 17 or higher. If we are fortunate enough to have at least 2 dragons on our side of the battlefield, then each of these dragons will be the recipient of, hopefully, a slew of +1/+1 counters, if our d20 rolling skills are legit. In a deck where victory often comes through the air, Ancient Bronze Dragon's ability can help reach that goal much more quickly and is a definite inclusion into the 99 of this build. Furtag Cunning Instigator is a 3/3 dragon with flying and haste for 3 in Izzet colors. Whenever 1 or more dragons we control attack an opponent, we go target creature that player controls. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of our opponents, if that creature had to attack this combat, we put a +1/+1 counter on Furtag and draw a card. I cannot imagine many scenarios in which we activate Scion's ability to become a copy of Furtag, and its abilities are better suited for a deck that attempts to exploit the goad mechanic, which this is not. Pass. Wrathful Red Dragon is a tricky card to evaluate. It has a powerful synergy with dragons, as whenever damage is dealt to any dragons we control, we deal that much to any target that is not a dragon. For the purposes of combat, this dragon acts as a deterrent for our opponents. But how often are we not sending dragons into combat, and how often do our opponents have flying or reaching blockers? Are spells like Blasphemous Act, Chain Reaction, or Chandra's Ignition prevalent in your playgroup or LGS? If you rarely leave dragons untapped, if your dragons are rarely blocked, and if direct damage spells are as rare as winter roses, then Wrathful Red Dragon is not for you. However, the majority of decks in my playgroup sport hosts of flying threats and have direct damage spells up the yin-yang. Not only is Wrathful Red Dragon a definite inclusion in this deck, Blasphemous Act will be added to the 99 as well for the purposes of including another potential win condition when this sorcery is cast and we have multiple dragons on our side of the battlefield. Miram Sentinel Worm is a 6/6 dragon spirit with flying and ward 2 for 3 in Temur colors. Whenever another non-token dragon enters a battlefield under our control, we create a token that's a copy of it, except the token is not legendary if that dragon is legendary. Woven into the 99 of this build is a mass recursion strategy that provides various win conditions. As the graveyard fills with dragons due to Scion's ability, spells like Living Death, Patriarch's Bidding, and Rise of the Dark Realms are used to return these dragons to our side of the battlefield. As these dragons enter the battlefield, if Dragon Tempest is under our control, then we will dole out direct damage like candy from a Pez dispenser, and then send a thunder of hasty dragons into game-winning combat. By planning, we strategically fill our graveyard with dragons like Lothless Dragon Queen, Scourge of Valkus, and Terror of the Peaks for the purposes of winning through direct damage alone. Miram Sentinel Worm makes these strategies even more potent and is a definite inclusion in this deck. Its imminent presence in the 99 of this build notwithstanding, Miram would make an amazing general for a Temur Dragon deck. As mentioned previously during this set review, Earthquake Dragon's best fit is in a Dragon Tribal deck or a Changeling deck. We will never pay 14 and a green mana to cast this spell, and realistically, paying a single green mana is very reasonable considering the number of beefy CMCs that are attached to the dragons in this deck. It's also a great target for Scion's ability, particularly if there are enough resources available to double activate Scion's ability and one-shot an opponent for lethal commander damage with Earthquake Dragon as the finisher. With the recursion ability stapled onto its 10/10 flying and trampling body, Earthquake Dragon is a definite inclusion in this deck. Brainstealer Dragon is a 6/6 flyer for 5 and 2 black mana. However, and rightfully so, we have reached a point in the refinement of this dragon deck where big flyers are just not enough anymore. If this dragon had another keyword ability like Menace or Trample, then its candidacy for inclusion could be discussed through different lenses. Its life drain ability is slow, it targets just one opponent, it's randomized, as the top card of each opponent's library is exiled. This also may shift away the focus of our resources onto our opponent's spells, which, again, are completely random and generally difficult to predict. The slots in this dragon deck have become quite contentious, and any red flag should equate to immediate dismissal. Unfortunately for Brainstealer Dragon, these red flags have been identified. Pass. Astral Dragon is a 4/4 flyer for 6 and 2 blue mana. That's 8 total mana for a total of 8 power and toughness with just 1 keyword ability. So far, not good. When it enters the battlefield, we create 2 tokens of target non-creature permanent, except they're 3/3 dragon creatures in addition to their other types and have flying. For starters, I can't imagine many scenarios in which we activate Scion's ability to become a copy of Astral Dragon. I can't imagine many scenarios in which we want this dragon in our graveyard as we prepare for a game-ending mass recursion spell. In the current 99 of this build, there are 12 non-land, non-creature permanents. Do we copy Soul Ring? Do we copy Rhystic Study? Do we want to make 2 copies of a land? Are we planning on copying an opponent's permanent? Copying Dragon Tempest could be game-ending. However, remember, these token copies are also dragons, so they become susceptible to a plethora of potential removal spells and effects. This dragon does not synergize well with the scope of this build. Pass. As we have enhanced the quality of dragons in this deck, so too we should optimize ways to get them onto the battlefield more quickly for the purposes of outmaneuvering our opponents. Monster Manual allows us to do just that, although casting the adventure side of this spell may not be in our best interests. We don't want to accidentally lose any Scion combo pieces like Molten Steel Dragon or Skithiryx the Blight Dragon. The artifact side of this spell is pushing this card into the 99 of the deck. We can cheat a dragon into play for half of the mana needed to activate Quicksilver Amulet. For the purposes of redundancy, it may be beneficial to keep Quicksilver Amulet in the 99 as well as include Monster Manual. In the current 99 of this deck, there are 19 dragons with mana values of 6 or more. That same 6 mana can be used to activate both Monster Manual and Quicksilver Amulets and put 2 dragons onto the battlefield at instant speed for that same 6 mana. This is a definite inclusion in the deck, but we may need to slightly weaken one of our areas of strength if we plan to keep Quicksilver Amulet. Let me know in the comment section below which card would you swap out for Monster Manual. By my count, we are planning to add 8 new dragons to the 99, as well as Monster Manual and, at some point, Blasphemous Act. The following 8 dragons from the current 99 will be replaced in order to make room for the new additions. Nicol Bolas originally was included in this deck in order to deal with control players and blue mages. There's very little a player can do without any cards in their hand, and through an activation of Scion's ability, Nicol Bolas emptied an opponent's hand, thereby basically nullifying their presence at the table. Bolas served this purpose well. Unfortunately, the Elder Dragon cycle from Battle for Baldur's Gate has many more powerful abilities when they connect for combat damage, unfortunately ending Nicol Bolas's time in this deck. Bladewing the Risen is a dragon that was chosen rarely as the target of an activation by Scion, and was only done so for the purposes of setting up a recursion combo. Targeted recursion duties now are handed over to Ancient Brass Dragon, who easily could become the target of Scion's activated ability, and has the potential to return 1 or more dragons from our graveyard to the battlefield. Replacing Okagachi, Vengeful Kami, represents a changing of thought processes secondary to the attitude of this deck. This dragon was a reactive choice through Scion's activated ability, as we can exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls if Okagachi deals combat damage to an opponent that attacked us during their last turn. With the inclusion of the new Elder Dragon cycle, we will be more proactive in our approach to piloting this deck. By reaping more optimized peripheral benefits of dealing commander damage when Scion becomes copies of any of the newbies, dragons with lesser abilities, like Okagachi, will be left out in the cold. Hellkite Overlord's regeneration ability and Silumgar Drifting Death's hexproof were utilized for the purposes of protecting Scion from being destroyed or spot removed. As our dependence on Scion dulls slightly due to the influx of other powerful dragons and, inevitably, more options for cheating them into play, so too does our need for protecting our general. Therefore, these dragons' tenures in the deck have come to an end. Hellkite Tyrant's ability to steal artifacts from an opponent has proven useful in the past. However, it has never translated to a game-winning collection of artifacts. Although the presence of Ancient Copper Dragon could change that percentage, Hellkite Tyrant's spot in the 99 is now Ancient Copper Dragons due to its mass treasure token generating ability. A misunderstanding of Scalelord Reckoner's protection ability led to its inclusion in this deck upon its release in the 2017 Draconic Domination pre-constructed Commander deck. It was interpreted falsely that activating Scion's ability in response to being targeted by an opponent's spell or an ability, and becoming a copy of Scalelord Reckoner, would allow for the destruction of a non-land permanent that opponent controls. That, unfortunately, is not the case, as once Scion is targeted, the target hits the stack and switching to Scalelord Reckoner will not trigger Scalelord Reckoner's ability. The Reckoner remained in the 99 anyway, mainly for its potential to dissuade an opponent from targeting our dragons when they're on our side of the battlefield. Well, dragons that do not do enough for the deck are no longer considered due to the crop of newbies released in Battle for Baldur's Gate. Thus, Scalelord Reckoner is out. Of all the dragons to be replaced from the current 99 of this build, selecting Wasitora Nekuro Queen causes the most apprehension. She is great at forcing an opponent to sacrifice their Voltron commander or a creature with protection like Shroud or Indestructible. Of course, this only works if she connects for combat damage and an opponent has no other creatures to sacrifice. In Wasitora's absence, only Cyclonic Rift has a non-targeting ability to deal with this type of problem. Time will tell if this decision will benefit the deck. The primary win condition of this Morphin the Boundless Shapeshifter with Changeling Tribal deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any creatures from the current Changeling pool with more powerful options. In addition, any new tribal spells and effects, Changeling-specific spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement will be assessed for possible inclusion. For the purposes of flavor, any tribe-specific cards also will be evaluated. Robe of the Archmagi is an equipment that costs 2 and a blue to cast, 4 to equip, but just 1 to equip to a Shaman, Warlock, or Wizard. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw that many cards. The reduction in the equip cost is nice, particularly in a Changeling deck, but evasion is lacking, and our shapeshifters with Changeling would be in need of Changeling pool support in order for this equipment to be considered effective, even with the payoff of drawing cards equal to the amount of damage dealt. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the first equipment inserted into the 99. Pass. Minsk and Boo Timeless Heroes offer a brand new creature type representative for the Changeling pool. Hamsters! They automatically gain inclusion into the Changeling pool because of this and become the 86th different creature type to be represented in this Shapeshifter with Changeling tribal build. Captain Nagathred is a 3/6 horror pirate for 3 in Dimir colors and gives horror creatures we control menace. Whenever a horror we control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. At the beginning of our end step, we choose target artifact or creature in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. We put it onto the battlefield under our control, free of charge. Creature evasion, a milling effect, recursion, and one of the easiest decisions ever, Captain Nagathred dethrones Thing in the Ice to become the new Horror Tribe representative. With just 20 instant and sorcery spells in the current 99 of this deck, transforming Thing in the Ice into Awoken Horror and bouncing all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands was a difficult task. The Horror Tribe deserves better than a 0/4 creature with Defender. Welcome aboard, Captain Nagathred. Multi-class Baldric is an equipment that costs 1 to cast and 2 to equip. Equipped creature has lifelink if we control a cleric, death touch if we control a rogue, haste if we control a warrior, and flying if we control a wizard. As long as we have a full party, we prevent all damage that will be dealt to equipped creature. Ever since the inception of this Shapeshifter tribal deck and its corresponding Changeling pool, the search for an appropriately themed equipment commenced, particularly for use when Godo Bandit Warlord was selected for participation in the 99. We can tap into the versatility of multi-class Baldric due to the presence of our Shapeshifters with Changeling. Each Shapeshifter with Changeling we control allows us to select another ability on multi-class Baldric. The flavor is spot on with this equipment, and the keywords are very relevant, particularly the aforementioned desire for evasion. This is a definite inclusion into the 99 and could replace Reflections of Litjara. Stick Together is a very powerful board wipe. In the absence of any player having a full party, each player will sacrifice all creatures they control. Creatures with protection, shroud, hexproof, or indestructible will not be able to skirt by this sorcery. As an added and flavorful bonus, if we have a full party, then that party will remain on the battlefield. Any 4 shapeshifters with Changeling will equate to a full party, as well as some combination of clerics, rogues, warriors, and wizards from our Changeling pool. This card is another step towards optimizing the flavor of the deck and making it more formidable. The power of this card is chart-topping. It is shocking to me that at the time of this video's upload, this rare's market value is less than 25 cents. This is a definite inclusion into the 99 and could replace either Austere Command or Blasphemous Act. Raphael, Fiendish Savior, offers a brand new creature type representative for the Changeling pool, Tieflings. He automatically gains inclusion into the Changeling pool because of this, and becomes the 87th different creature type to be represented in this Shapeshifter with Changeling tribal build. There are 8 cards from Battle for Baldur's Gate that are threatening some current tribal incumbents. Each of these cards could represent the Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, or Wizard tribes. Before we evaluate the challengers, let's review the current tribal leaders. Aura, Skyclave Hierophant, is the Cleric tribe representative and is a 3/3 core Cleric with lifelink for 2 in Orzhov colors. Whenever Aura or another Cleric we control dies, we return target Cleric card with lesser mana value from our graveyard to the battlefield. Zareth San, the Trickster, is the Rogue tribe representative and is a 4/4 Merfolk Rogue with Flash for 3 in Dimir colors. We may pay 2 in Dimir colors and return an unblocked attacking rogue we control to our hand and put Zareth San onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Whenever Zareth San deals combat damage to a player, we may put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield and under our control. Nagila the Blade Blossom is the Warrior tribe representative and is a 3/2 human warrior for 2 in 1 red mana. Whenever a warrior attacks, we may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking. We may pay Wooburg mana and untap all attacking creatures. They gain trample, lifelink, and haste until the end of turn. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. We only activate this ability during combat. Sage of Fables is the Wizard tribe representative and is a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard for 2 in 1 blue mana. Each other wizard creature we control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. We may pay 2 and remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature we control and draw a card. Now we're on to the challengers. Harper Recruiter is a 3/1 human warrior with flying for 2 in 1 white mana. Whenever it attacks, we look at the top 4 cards of our library. We may reveal a Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and/or Wizard card from among them and put those cards into our hand. The evasion gives Harper Recruiter legs to stand on, and its effect is repeatable. However, there are only 18 shapeshifters with Changeling in the current 99 of this build. There is a real chance of whiffing on this effect. Admittedly, even without the chance of missing, is this effect more powerful than recursion, pilfering opponents' permanents, token creation, multiple combat phases, or card draw? The answer is no. Pass. Solemn Doom Guide is a 4/5 Tiefling Cleric with flying for 3 in 2 black mana. Each creature card in our graveyard that's a Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, or Wizard has Unearth for 1 in 1 black mana. To unearth a creature, we return it to the battlefield and it gains haste until end of turn. We exile the creature at the beginning of the end step or if it were to leave the battlefield, and we can only unearth as a sorcery. Very few of our shapeshifters with Changeling have enter the battlefield triggers, and even fewer can make an impact on a 1-turn basis. As another detriment, we eventually lose the creature to exile. This one-and-done effect does not seem as impactful as any of the abilities provided by the current tribal incumbents. Pass. Nalia Dearnis is a 3/3 human rogue for 1 in Orzhov colors. We may look at the top card of our library at any time. We may cast Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard spells from the top of our library. At the beginning of combat on our turn, if we have a full party, then we put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control, and those creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. As noted earlier, we have just 18 shapeshifters with Changeling. so the odds are low of getting value from Nalia's peek and cast. Additionally, to have a full party, we need a minimum of 4 shapeshifters with Changeling on our side of the battlefield. Even then, our rewards are just a +1/+1 counter for each creature we control, and temporary death touch. Perhaps if the creature count in the 99 were higher, then Nalia would be given greater consideration. Unfortunately, she is not as impactful as any of the current tribal leaders. Pass. The primary win condition of this Hinata Dawn-Crowned deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any cards that create tokens through casting non-creature spells from the current 99 of this build with more powerful options. In addition, any new X target spells and effects, as well as any new forms of combat enhancement, will be assessed for possible inclusion. Storm King's Thunder is an X spell that does not fit into the X spell blueprint by which this deck is sculpted. It does not target anything, which means it will not receive any cost reduction benefits from Hinata. However, by paying triple red and X, we copy the next instant or sorcery spell we cast X times. Copying Call the Coppercoats could flood our side of the battlefield with legions of human soldier creature tokens. Copying Swords to Plowshares could exile our opponent's most problematic and troublesome creatures. Copying Shreds of Sanity could refill our hand with powerful instant and sorcery cards from our graveyard. Copying Launch the Fleet becomes game-ending. Storm King's Thunder is a definite consideration for this Hinata deck, and easily could replace a card like Jired's Belligerence or Meteor Swarm. The primary win conditions of the Sisay Weatherlight Captain Enchantments Matter deck are direct damage and life drain. These win conditions can be improved by adding any new shrines to the 99 of this build. In addition, any new Enchantments Matter spells and effects will be assessed for possible inclusion. For the purposes of flavor, any enchantment-specific cards also will be evaluated. Unfortunately, there are no cards from Battle for Baldur's Gate that meet the criteria needed to trigger a review for possible replacements in this Sisay Weatherlight Captain Enchantments Matter deck. The primary win condition of this Niv Mizzet Reborn Guild's Matter deck is combat damage. This win condition can be improved by replacing any cards in the 99 with more powerful versions. For the purposes of flavor, all cards must meet the following deck building restrictions. For each guild, there are 2 legendary creatures. One is a beatdown creature, and the other is an auxiliary creature. There are 2 forms of disruption, 1 form of player advantage, and 1 form of battlefield enhancement. Any new 2-color cards will be assessed for possible inclusion. The Council of 4 is a 0/8 legendary human noble for 3 in Azorius colors. Whenever a player draws their second card during our turn, we draw a card. Whenever a player casts their second spell during our turn, we create a 2/2 White Knight creature token. Notice the text on the Council. It says, whenever a player, meaning we could trigger this effect as well. If we draw our second card or cast our second spell during our turn, we will trigger the Council. Where could this creature fit into this Niv Mizzet deck? Well, it certainly isn't a beatdown creature with its 0/8 body. It could be considered an auxiliary creature, as it does help our board state by creating creature tokens and putting cards into our hand, which eventually will end up impacting the board. The current Azorius auxiliary creature is Wrath Capuchin, Ship's Mage, a 3/3 flyer with flash for 1 in Azorius colors that allows us to cast historic spells as though they had splash. Flash is useful, but is it more useful than peripheral token creation and card draw? In the current 99 of this build, there are 26 creatures and 1 enchantment that benefit from Flash enablement. That's 27 of 60 cards, or 45% of the spells in the deck. The Council of 4 appears to offer more to this build, and as such, will replace Wrath Capuchin as the Azorius auxiliary creature. Alando the Seer is a 3/5 legendary human shaman for 2 in Simic colors. We can tap him to draw a card, and then we exile a card from our hand with a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. It gains, when the last time counter is removed from this card, if it's exiled, we may cast it without paying its mana cost. If we cast a creature spell this way, it gains haste until the end of turn. Then we remove a time counter from each other card we own in exile. This Joyra of the Gitu-like ability is a powerful way to cheat cards into play. Removing a time counter from each card in exile every time we utilize Alando's ability sweetens the deal immensely. Although not a beat-down creature with a 3/5 body, we can consider Alando to be an auxiliary creature. Currently, Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter, is the Simic auxiliary creature in this build. Rashmi's Cascade or Draw the Card ability helps to keep the hits coming, but Alando draws a card, sets up a spell to be cast, and removes time counters from other exiled spells, allowing them to be cast ahead of curve. Alando simply outvalues Rashmi and will be the new Simic auxiliary creature in this Niv Mizzet build. That concludes our Battle for Baldur's Gate review for the Burgeoning Commander Catalog. Be sure to click the links in the description below to see deck lists for each of these builds. Are there any cards we left out? Let us know in the comment section, in addition to which cards you would replace. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.